Those councillors in attendance, if you could please turn on your cameras. Thank you very much. In Mayor Ireland's absence, I am chairing today's regular meeting. So welcome to today's regular council meeting for the Municipality of Jasper for Tuesday, May 4th, 2021. On top of May 4th being Star Wars Day, May 4th is also International Firefighters Day. So I thought it would be a great opportunity to start our meeting by first dedicating a moment of gratitude to our recently retired Director of Emergency Services, Chief Greg Van Tighem, who protected us, mentored others, dedicated an extreme amount of his time and life to our community and our safety, and also a moment of gratitude for the men and women who form our volunteer fire brigade. They risk their lives every call for keeping us, our community members, and our families safe. So thank you very much to all of the firefighters out there everywhere and in Jasper. As it is 9:31, I will call us to order. Having a chance to review today's agenda, I'll first start by asking if there's any additions to today's agenda. Hearing no additions, may I have a motion to please approve today's agenda as presented? Councillor Keller-Empey, thank you very much. All in favor? That is carried. We have before us the regular meeting minutes of April 20th, 2021. You've had a chance to review them. Are there any corrections to be made to those minutes? Hearing no corrections, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the April 20th meeting as presented? Thank you very much, Councillor Demota. All in favor? That is carried. This morning we have two presentations scheduled on agenda item number 4. The first being our 2020 financial audit. Mr. Elliston is with us to present the audit from 2020. We will move through the presentation from Mr. Elliston and we will take questions following the presentation. Mr. Elliston, are you able to turn your camera on and unmute? Great, thank you and welcome to our meeting.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me. All right, well, I guess I'll get started. I hope I see if my screen share is working or not. Okay, perfect. Hope everybody can see that okay?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, I'll get started here. So my name is Jeff Alliston. I'm a partner with Metrics Group LLP, a firm responsible for the external audit for the Municipality of Jasper. So I'll go over a presentation. I'll do a bit of an audit overview as to why we have an audit and the importance of it. I'll talk about our independent auditor's report, and then I'll go over some financial highlights for the year, and then I'll take any questions at the end in relation to that. After that, I have another presentation. I have an audit findings report that I'll go over with council as well, just discussing the results of our audit, as well as adoption of some new accounting standards that are coming into effect 3 years from now, and the impact that could have on the municipality. So with that said, at the beginning of the presentation, I like to give a bit of an overview as to an audit. So why we have an audit, and really the main reason is to enhance the degree of confidence of intended users. So those intended users being yourselves as councillors, ratepayers, the province of Alberta when it comes to lending debt, and as well as municipal affairs. So again, organizations or individuals that would have an interest in the financial results of the Municipality of Jasper. As auditors, it's achieved by us expressing an opinion. So we give assurance that financial statements are free from a material misstatement. So what that means as auditors, we seek reasonable assurance. So it's a high level of assurance, but it's not absolute assurance. So we do not audit every transaction that happened in the year. Most evidence is persuasive but not conclusive. Also, as auditors, we exercise professional judgment, and we also maintain professional skepticism. So a questioning mind. We stay alert to conditions which may indicate possible misstatements. So areas there, we'd be concerned with cutoff. We want to make sure that transactions that occurred in 2020 or in 2020 and those in 2021 or in 2021. As well, revenue recognition. We want to make sure revenue is being recognized once services have been provided, as well as collectability of accounts receivable. So are the receivables at year end deemed to be collectible, or should there be an allowance provision set up in order to reduce the amount owing or to be collected at year end? Also, a critical assessment of audit evidence. So has the evidence been altered? Is the evidence that we're looking at actual source documentation, or has it been manipulated in some way? So those are areas for an auditor that we're looking at when we're discussing professional skepticism. On page 3 and 4 of the audited financial statements is our independent auditor's report, which is 2 pages long. The main part of it is really at the beginning, at the top there, where we discuss our opinion. And our opinion is that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position, results of operations in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. And Canadian public sector accounting standards are the standards that your municipality reports under, as well as all other municipalities across Canada. Other reporting frameworks that you might run into, or not-for-profits have a different reporting framework, as well as publicly traded companies which report under international financial reporting standards. Basis for opinion, or the second part of the audit report, is indicated that the audit is performed in accordance with Canadian generally accepted auditing standards. And auditing standards are the same across Canada. So whether you're a publicly traded company, a local government, or a not-for-profit, auditing standards are the same. It's a reporting framework that will differ amongst organizations. Responsibilities and management and those charged with governance for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements. And then the second page of our audit report identifies auditors' responsibilities for the audit, which in summary indicates that our objective is to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatement. So we do consider relevant internal controls. Procedures do depend on our judgment, and as well, we do evaluate your accounting policies and estimates. So main estimates being your useful life of your tangible capital assets and your allowance for doubtful accounts at year end. So with that said, I'll jump into a snapshot or where the municipality was at as at December 31, 2020. So this is a slide of your statement of financial position. You'll see your cash position really is your main financial asset. There is made up of 18.4 million. So it was down from prior years 19.7, a $1.2 million decrease there. So the decrease in cash really had to do, so your cash generated from operations increased your cash by about 3.3 million. You then had spent 3.7 million on tangible capital asset additions, as well as 770,000 on debt repayments. So that change in cash netted a decrease at your end of 1.2 million. Trades and grants in place of taxes receivable at year end. So that was made up of $343,000 at year end. So it's broken up between your current taxes and grants in place of taxes. So taxes 1 year or less that are due, as well as your arrears taxes, which are 1 year and over. So you do see a slight increase there, about 18% in your current taxes and a 40% increase year over year in your arrears taxes. So this is becoming more of a trend, commonplace in Alberta, definitely with the COVID-19 pandemic and the oil economy, economic hardship. Definitely keep getting your taxes collected has become more of an issue for many municipalities that I'm definitely seeing when it comes to year end. Jasper's obviously have increased slightly, nothing really significant to say, but definitely something to be mindful of going forward. That make sure that your taxes are that you are trying to collect those, and that you're not left with any larger balances that are deemed to be uncollectible at year end. So with that said, there is an allowance for doubtful accounts of 30,000 at year end. So 373 owing with allowance of 30,000 left the municipality of Jasper with 343,000 to be collected subsequent to year end. Other receivables include receivables from other governments. So that was up to 2.3 million from $1 million in the prior year. Main increases there is your MSI capital receivable was at 1.4 million, as well as ID number 12 for 445,000 in amounts owing there. So that's where you see the increase in the receivables. Trade accounts receivables up to 1.3 million from 1 million. There was an amount there at year end for 200,000 for utilities for Jasper Park Lodge, which caused the increase in the trade receivables from year over year. Goods and services tax to be collected was 224,000, leaving the municipality with 3.9 million to be collected, as well as an allowance for doubtful accounts of 235,000, which is in relation to the trade accounts receivable balance, leaving the total balance owing of 3.6 million. Other financial assets, so there is a small amount there for debt recoverable and local improvements. So this is collected during the tax roll in the year. So principal repayment are collected in the year. So that left you with 18,000 there. Total financial assets for Jasper was at 22.4 million. So up prior year, 400,000 from 22 million, or 18% increase there. Liabilities, so what the municipality owes subsequent to year end for services rendered in 2020. So accounts payable and accrued liabilities at year end were 3.3 million. So that's made up of general trade payables of 2.4 million, which was down about $1 million from prior year. You have holdbacks in there for 432,000. So work that is being held back for construction projects that are deemed in progress, as well as wages payable of 122,000 or 23,000, which made up the 3.3 million. Employee benefit obligations owing for 500,000, and then deposit liabilities of 108. Deferred revenue is at 6.7 million. So these are made up of grants that the municipality of Jasper has collected during the year that is still to be spent on projects going forward. So this is a breakdown of your grant projects or deferred revenue. So you see your operating amount. You started the year at 690,000. You then collected 4.8 million. The majority of that is made up of the municipal operating stimulus transfer, which was 3.3 million to offset any costs in relation to lost revenues for the municipality year. So 2.9 million, or almost 3 million of the 3.3 million, was recognized in 2020 to offset costs there. You also saw 1.2 million. It's made up mainly of a fire grant, as well as Parks Canada money in the year that was collected and used on operations in both those areas during the year. So total operating grants still to be spent in future years up to 1.1 million. Capital grants in the year. So capital grants, Municipal Sustainable Initiative Grant, or MSI, 1.4 million in additions. That's your 2020 allocation, as well as your federal gas tax fund, which is 264,000, which is your 2020 allocation as well. You then spent money on capital projects in the year, S Block parking lot paving, so that was 356,000 of the MSI being spent, as well as federal gas tax funding of $1 million, which was spent on arena boards and slabs in the year, leaving you with 800,000 in federal gas tax still to be spent. So the total capital grants still to be spent by the municipality of Jasper started the year at 5.4 million and ended the year at 5.6 for a total deferred revenue of 6.7 million. After looking at your grants, deferred revenue of 6.7, long-term debt makes up your next largest liability there of 6.5 million. So your total long-term debt for the year is at, again, 6.5 million, made up of four debentures at year end. So again, you can see the rates on here ranging from 2.5% up to 5.6% with maturities of 2022 to 2034. No new debt in a year, just principal repayment of $770,000. The municipality's debt limits, which are made up of 1.5 times your total operating revenue. So your total debt limit is 27.8 million, total debt of 6.5 in the year, for an amount of debt unused of 1.2. Service on debt limits, so how much debt can be repaid within a year within the Municipal Government Act guidelines, is at 4.6 million. Service on debt next year is estimated to be 1 million for an amount of service of debt limit unused of 3.6 million. So the municipality is definitely well within its debt limit set by the MGA. After looking at your liabilities and your financial assets, your total or your net financial asset position to end the year is 5.2 million, so up from prior year's 4 million. So this is a good indicator of the financial health of the municipality. So if you were to take your financial assets, your cash, collect your receivables, you'd be left with 22.5 million. You would then pay off your liabilities, which we had talked about being grant programs, repayment, long-term debt or vendors payables. You'd be left with 5.2 million in cash at year end. So again, it indicates that you have sufficient financial assets to offset your liabilities. The non-financial assets of the municipality, obviously the largest one being your tangible capital assets. You started the year at 58.5 million. You then added new capital additions to the municipality of almost 3.8 million. So that included S block parking lot paving, a water slide, which was included in the buildings category, as well as a transfer from WIP in the year. Machinery equipment, you had some garbage bin replacements, as well as the gym, I think Jim Vena stage, hopefully I got that right, which was in progress last year. So that's where you see the machine equipment of 789,000 being transferred, as well as the additional machine equipment amount this year. So that's that coming into use. And then items that were added to construction in progress during the year, arena replacement of slabs and boards, as well as the curling rink work. So that's what made up the additions of 2.6 in the construction in progress. One thing to take from this, from an accounting standpoint, your additions in the year were at 3.8 million. Your amortization expense is 2.6. And what your amortization expense is telling you, although it's a non-cash item, is it's telling you that when you purchase an asset at the last 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you're taking a percentage of that asset into your operations every year. So if a grader is going to last 5 years, you're going to take 1/5 of that cost and amortize it into your operations. So what this is telling you is that the municipality was able to add to its tangible capital assets in the year, and in fact replace the amortization expense that it had used amongst the pool. So again, it's just a way to look at it from an accounting standpoint. So again, you started the year at 58.5 million and ended the year at 59.5. Other non-financial assets include your prepaid expenses or expenses paid in 2020 for use in 2021 of 460,000. Leaving you with non-financial assets of 60 million, or a 1.1 increase from prior year. Accumulated surplus, which is made up of your net financial assets plus your non-financial assets, is at 65 million, or up 2.3 million from prior year 62.8. So breakdown of your accumulated surplus is made up of these three categories. So your unrestricted, restricted, as well as your equity and TCA. So your unrestricted surplus increased to 6.6 million from 6.3, or a $300,000 increase. Restricted surplus, you saw a decrease in your operating or general restricted surplus down to 219,000, and an increase in your capital restricted surplus to 4.1 from 3.7. The main increase here is in your equity and tangible capital assets, so up to 53 million from 51. And the reason for that is in relation to your net change in your additions versus your amortization expense. So that left the municipality with a total accumulated surplus of 65.2 million. After looking at the statement of financial position, on the next page is the statement of operations. So I'll go over some highlights of your operating revenues. So the main revenue source for the municipality is its net municipal property taxes, which were down from prior year to 6.3 million from 7.2. So you have seen a net decrease there of 13%. This was a result of your 10% decrease in your assessments, as well as an increase in mill rates, or net increase in mill rates of 5%, and an increase in requisitions. So you saw an extra 150,000 being paid to Alberta, I think, School Foundation, or ASFF, and as well as policing requisition of 126,000. So that caused the net change in prior year to current year for your net municipal property taxes. Government transfers for operating, so you do see a bit of an increase here. Obviously, you budgeted 2.3 and the year 5.5. The change there is related to the municipal sustainable grant of 3 million, or MOST grant. So that caused the increase there. Other changes in the year, user fees and sales of goods. So obviously down to 5 million from 6.3. With COVID-19 and the pandemic and closures, obviously childcare as well as recreational facilities within the municipality services were not generating the same revenue as in prior years, so a decrease there. You also see the same decrease in the rentals in relation to the recreation rentals as well. And then other revenues, you see that down to 381 from $1,020,000. So the prior year you had the Jim Vena stage $750,000 contribution there. So that's why you see the large decrease in the other category. With that said, the municipality ended the year at 18.5 million, or down 4.4% from prior year's 19.3, and a 3 million increase based on your budget, mainly in relation to the municipal operating stimulus funding or MOST grant, recording your government transfers for operating. This is just a bit of a pie chart here, kind of shows the breakdown of the municipality's operating revenue. So obviously net municipal property taxes is your largest, but it only makes up around a third of your total operating revenues. Government transfers for operating made up another third. And then user fees and sales of goods make up 27%. So again, leaving the other 25% in relation to your franchising, concession contracts, rentals, investment. Breakdown of your operating revenues. Expenses by function for the municipality. So definitely some changes here. When it comes to your expenses for your utilities, you ended the year at 4.5 million. You had budgeted for additional repairs and capital projects within the budget there of 5.4 million, with the actual being 4.5. Parks and recreation, 3.2 million versus 2.6, or from prior year's 3.8. So definitely in prior year, before the pandemic happened, there was more additional parks and recreation as well as public health employees within those categories. So that's where you really see the decrease there in the salaries and wages when it comes to both those areas. Roadwalk, streets, and lighting, you end the year at 1.2 million. Again, general repairs and maintenance in relation to those categories. Protective services down to 1.5 million from prior year's 1.9. You had more fire response expenses in the prior year when it came to protective services, which left the municipality at 15.9 million, or down 2.5 million from prior year's 18.4, and then budgeted 60 million with a budget of 15.9, or $110,000 variance there. This chart here kind of shows you where you lined up with your budget. So the budget is the line category, as well as the dark blue being the current year operating costs, and the light blue being the prior year. So you can see in most categories you're either at the line or just below. You see categories with larger swings. Parks and recreation and public health, obviously you're above the budget there in relation to budgeted wages versus actual in those two categories. And then utilities for additional repairs that were not needed in the year, so you saw a decrease there from the budgeted amount. Expenses by object, so where the money was spent, salaries, wages, and benefits, actual was 7.6. I think the biggest swing is again from the prior year's 8.7, where you saw less wages or less employment in the childcare and recreation areas amongst the municipality's operations. Contract and general services is at 4.8, and materials, goods, and services are at 3 million. Amortization expense I spoke on a bit earlier, 2.6 million. It's kind of just a representation of the use of your capital assets in the year for operations. Transfers to local boards and agencies at 230,000, and then interest on long-term debt at 107. So again, that left the municipality 18.5 in operating expenses, down from prior year 2.5 million or 12% from 21 million, and then budgeted 16, which does not include amortization expense. So after looking at operating revenues and expenses, the municipality ended at an operating deficit of $37,000 in the year versus prior year's $1.6 million deficit. Other income, so these are items that are just associated with capital. So your government transfers for capital purchases of 2.3 million, made up mainly of 1 million of federal gas tax funding that was for the arena boards, 650,000 for ID12, as well as 253,000 of MSI capital recognized in the year. Left you with total capital income of 2.4 million. And an annual surplus after looking at your operating deficit of 37,000 plus 2.3 million left you with an annual surplus of 2.35 million, which caused you an increase in your accumulated surplus of 62.8 to 65 million. After looking at your annual surplus in relation to Canadian public sector accounting standards, you'll see that your annual surplus or budget amount is at 3.1 million. When the municipality prepares its budget, the results of its operating budget is at net zero. So I will work you back to your budget at this time. So your annual surplus in the year at 2.3 million based on Canadian public sector accounting standards. You would then add back your amortization expense of 2.6. You had net transfers to reserves of 173,000. You then deduct your principal repayment of long-term debt, which was 769,000, gain loss on tangible capital assets of 31,000, and then your actual purchases of capital of 3.7 million versus budgeted of 5.2, which left your results of operations as budgeted of 321,000 versus the initial zero set up in the budget. So that's kind of a reflection of when you add back non-cash items and deduct your actual capital asset purchases, more of on a cash basis when it comes to presentation of the budget data. In summary, the municipality again ended the year with a 2.3 million annual surplus. Your net financial asset position increased. I can see I'm missing a zero here. That kind of looks funny, but anyways, at 5.2 million versus 4 million in the prior year. And again, what that's telling you is that you have sufficient financial assets to cover your liabilities, which is good. I also have an audit findings report, but in summary, there were no significant control deficiencies, no unusual accounting policies or estimates. We do have some unrecorded misstatements that we feel are not material to the financial statements. We did not encounter any significant difficulties. I also wanted to take time to thank management and staff for all their support this year in helping us to complete our audit. Obviously, practicing safe social distancing. We performed our audit work remotely using Zoom and Teams and other factors or technology in order to complete the work needed for our audit this year. So again, just want to thank for all the additional support there in sending us what we needed. And at this time, I can take any questions that anybody may have. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Alliston, for your presentation. I'm sure there's lots of questions from council. I think it's pretty amazing that you were able to achieve this audit all remotely. That's pretty fascinating. So are there any questions from council? Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, just had to find my mute button. On the slide, expense by function, there's quite a bit encapsulated underneath public health. Can you just confirm what it all falls within public health? As we don't really have public health as our under our municipality, as that definition.
I'm not sure. I don't know if I can answer that completely.
I guess I'm assuming it's FCS and
It does include FCSS. Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to take a look here. A good thing about being remotely or online is that I have access to a lot more information right in front of me than when I'm sitting there in person. Community development, JCC is included in here, as well as your early language costs. Parent link program. So yeah, definitely FCSS and early learning are included in here, as well as the childcare. I don't know if anybody else has anything more to add. But.
Okay, and that's fine. I just yeah, it was a bit maybe misleading to me to be public health, but yeah, no, it makes sense. What if it's FCS and everything that falls kind of within that realm.
Mr. Given.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor McGrath. Just very briefly, I think the general categorizations are given by the province in some of the financial reporting forms that they provide to municipalities. Some municipalities do choose to present it slightly differently. And so if you were to go on the Municipal Affairs website and call it up, you might see a bit of variation between how different municipalities choose to allocate different expenses. I think the approach that Mr. Allison's taken here is a pretty common one, but it is, especially in the light of a public health, emergency like a pandemic, it can be misleading and open to misinterpretation. But I think Mr. Allison's answer is completely appropriate. It really does focus on that FCSS side of our operations that we'd all be familiar with.
I would also say too, sorry, I was going to say on page, on the financial statements at the back, note 17, page 22, there's a summary or breakdown of all the different categories and kind of each department that's made up within those groupings, that statement of operations. That might be a little bit more beneficial, more information in some of the other categories for you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Demota.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Mr. Allison, thank you very much for the presentation and the detail that went behind the information. I'm just curious, this year during our budget deliberations, we were presented with a $1.775 million surplus, which flushed out through due to the most funding. I was just wondering, I tried to decipher that through this presentation and I couldn't really make it out, and I'm just wondering how that was broken down, if that's possible.
I'm not sure if I can answer that question. I might have to leave that one with management, or
Okay.
get back to you on that.
I didn't mean to put anybody on the spot.
No, that's okay.
Yeah,
no, that's okay.
It looks like Mr. Given has an answer for that one.
okay.
Well, thanks very much, Deputy Mayor McGrath. Maybe not exactly an answer at this stage, but certainly a response. Councillor Demota, this was a bit of the challenge that administration was identifying as we went through the budget and the challenge of closing off the 2020 year. We're expecting to bring a report to you on the year-end closeout and the recommendation for the allocation of that surplus to next week's meeting. So we'll provide additional clarity next week. Yeah, appreciate. So this is for the purpose of the audit. These are the exact numbers as approved by and reviewed by Mr. Allison and his team. We'll provide you a specific and detailed breakdown of the recommendation around year-end surplus, utilization of most at committee next week.
I'm satisfied with that. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Councillor Demota. Councillor Journeau.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Allison, for your fine presentation. On my page 22 of the agenda, which is operating revenue. So it's the page before the pie chart. You did provide some outline, but the first three lines, there's net municipal property tax, government transfers, and user fees. And I can understand some of the changes in there. But if you look at, and you did provide some explanation, I thought they were a little brief, because if you look at the amount from the previous year and budget, especially on the government transfer, I mean, those are new. user fees can be explained, but again, we're quite change between that and the budget line. So if you could just kind of repeat what you said about that, the explanation for those 3 lines, please.
For the net municipal property taxes, government tranches for operating, and the user fees, the 3 main ones.
That is correct.
Yeah,
Please,
okay, sure. So when it came to the net municipal property taxes year over year, you did see the 13% decrease in that category. So you did see a 10% assessment decrease from year over year, a 5% increase in mill rates. That offset that to a net change of 5%. What you did see also is additional requisition funds of $310,000 that made up the other difference in money spent. So you had paid more in school requisitions, about $150,000 year over year, and then policing requisition of $126,000. So that made up the change there. So definitely the increase in the assessment as well as the increase in requisition costs caused you to have a net municipal change. Also the property taxes, sorry, on the statement of financial, or the full financial statement on page 6 of the statement, kind of gives you a better breakdown of showing you what the taxation revenue was and then how the requisition payments increased from year over year. Government transfers for operating, so at 3.1 million. This year, the operating was at 5.5. So again, the most grant makes that up. Where you saw the decrease too is that the early learning grants. So in relation to FCSS program, you saw a decrease there, about almost 400,000 being spent in that from year over year, as well as in your fire or your FRIA grant. It's called Fire Rescue Initiatives, 240,000 less from prior year to current year. So that's why the net change from 2020 to 2019 is not quite 3 million, as you did have less operating grant in FCSS programs, which would be in line with your decrease in your expenses there, as well as in your fire costs as well. User fees and sales of goods. So again, the decrease there to 5 million from 6.3 in relation to recreation services and childcare ones that are provided there by the municipality in relation to your, again, your recreation services. So I'm hoping that maybe covers the 3 categories, or if somebody else has anything to add. Yep.
Go ahead, Councillor Journeau, if you'd like to follow up.
May I have a follow-up, please? Yes. So the most funding is demonstrated or included in there under the 5.5 million. So that was kind of my curiosity, the curiosity for me. Now, how much is that most funding for that line?
So you got 3.3 million in additions, and I believe almost 3 million was recognized in revenue. I think there's 300,000 to still be allocated into operating revenues, which you have
Thank you.
March 31st. So I'm assuming it was, well, it was spent in 2021 to offset costs there.
Thank you. I'll have further questions, but I'll wait for others to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Journeau. Any further questions? Councillor Journeau, if you wouldn't mind muting, please. Thank you. Mr. Elliston, did you have a second part of the presentation for us still?
Yeah, I do have an audit findings report that outlines a bunch of stuff that I can go over as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions before Mr. Elliston moves to the second part of his presentation? Great. Go ahead, Mr. Elliston. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So this should be part of your package as well, but this is our firm's audit findings report for the year ended December 31st, 2020. So on the second page, our table of contents here, I'll just summarize a few items that I'll go into detail. So we'll discuss what we still need in order to finalize our audit. I'll talk briefly on independence. I'll go over our audit approach, which has changed due to the pandemic. I'll talk about materiality, so what it means to an audit, and kind kind of the definition or results from that. I'll go over the audit results. I'll discuss a few areas as to in relation to risk from an auditor standpoint, our response to that risk, and then findings, as well as go over significant findings from our audit, unrecorded misstatements, as well as when I get to the appendix, I guess I'll get to Appendix 4 and talk about asset retirement obligations and what that could mean to the municipality 3 years from now with the adoption of the new accounting standards. So to begin, executive summary. So really, this report is just to promote effective two-way communication between ourselves as the auditors and you as councillors at the completion of the audit here. So in order to finalize our audit as of today's date, May 4, 2021, we have substantially completed the audit of the municipality's financial statements. So in order to do that, we wanted to complete our required communication, which is what we're doing right now, complete our subsequent event procedures up to today's date, as well as obtain evidence of a council's approval of the financial statement and obtain a signed management representation letter, which will allow us to issue signed financial statements for the year ended December 31, 2020. The top of page 3 of our report talks briefly about our independence. So we do feel that we are independent of the municipality. So we do not hold a financial interest or have an economic dependence on the municipality. Auditor's responsibilities. So I spoke about this at the beginning of my other presentation there in relation to the audited financial or the independent auditor's report. So in summary, just indicating there that our audit was performed in accordance with Canadian generally accepted auditing standards, and that the municipality does report in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. At the top of page 4, responsibility of management and those charged with governance for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements. And then the middle of page 4 is our audit approach. So definitely due to the COVID-19 pandemic and practicing safe social distancing, we did perform a substantive approach this year in completion of our audit. So we did not take reliance on internal controls when it came to us forming an opinion, where in the past we would be able to assess and audit internal controls. So it's not that we don't necessarily do any work there. We still assess and document internal controls that are in place. But from our audit standpoint, in order to issue our opinion and to give results of the financial statements this year, we used what's called a substantive approach in completing our audit of the municipality. On page 5 at the top, we talk about materiality and what that means to the audit. And really what materiality means is that if the financial results of the municipality of Jasper were to change, either increase or decrease by a specific amount, we feel as auditors that would change the view or the opinion of the users of the financial statements. So those users are yourselves as councillors, the province of Alberta, ratepayers, those with a vested interest in the financial results of the municipality. So for our standpoint, we use 3% of operating revenues, or $383,000, as our benchmark or guideline. So with a surplus of $2.3 million, we feel that if it were to increase by 383 or decrease by 383,000, that a potential or one of those users of the financial statement may have a different view. So again, that is how we gauge materiality or the meaning of it when it comes to the audit. And also at the bottom of page 5, again, just in summary, our commitment to communication between ourselves and you as councillors. In our audit results section of our report, this is where we have areas of focus for our audit. We identify risks within those areas, our response to those risks, and if we had any significant findings. So I'll go over a few of the important ones. So mainly receivable balances is an area from an audit that we want to make sure that is being appropriately accounted for. So risk there is that receivables are potentially uncollectible. Receivables potentially have been recorded with fictitious revenue, or revenues related to the year ended December 31, 2020 have not been accrued for. So again, you've provided services where the revenue has not been recognized. So in our response there, we do update our understanding of the municipality's policies regarding collection and provisions. We do test subsequent receipts. So we look at what was collected after year end in relation to see receivables being reported. We also do perform additional substantive procedures. We perform a search, so we do look at collection of amounts after year end and make sure that they've either been recorded as accrued receivables or they have been correctly recorded in the 2021 year. We also do coordinate work with receivables over deferred revenue and revenues to make sure that they are accurate at year end. So we had no significant findings in this area. Tangible capital assets is a big area of risk. So the potential risk there is that you've expensed items that should be capital, or you have items that are in capital that should be expensed, as well as the valuation of the assets. So you may have assets that are impaired or not providing economic benefit for the municipality anymore. So in our response there, we want to discuss with management for any indicators of impairment. We do perform tests over additions and disposals as well. And we do recalculate your amortization expense as well as your gain loss on tangible capital assets to make sure that it is accurate. So again, we had no significant findings there. Other areas, deferred revenue and government transfers is a big area there for us. So again, the risk there is that you're recognizing grant funding before performance obligations or stipulations of those agreements have been met. Revenue, also may have not been recorded with stipulations being met, or government transfers have been incorrectly captioned within the financial statement. So in our response there, we do review significant funding agreements that the municipality has. We do assess your compliance or performance obligations with that. We do assess the accuracy of revenue by matching costs and supporting documentation to those revenues, as well as perform a search for unrecorded revenues that may have been missed. So, as well as test the mathematical accuracy of your deferred revenue. So we did not have any significant findings there during the year, but again, there is a lot of work being done with government transfers coming in. Other areas, when we talk about revenue, net municipal property taxes or user fees, there's definitely risks there of incorrect rates being applied or items such as those revenues not being complete. So again, we do work in those areas. When it comes to net municipal property taxes, we want to ensure that your assessments are correct. We want to make sure that the rates approved by council or what are being applied in those areas. And same with user fees. We want to make sure that the user fee rates are being correct in that area. So again, we didn't have any significant findings. However, when it came to user fees, we had identified area and other matters on page 14 that we'll discuss in relation to wastewater services or billings during the year. Operating expenses, risk there is that you do have fraudulent expenses being recorded or expenses that have not been recorded in the correct fiscal period. So from an auditor's response, we have updated our understanding of your processes and controls when it comes to procurement and payments. We have agreed significant expenses, as well as we do agree a significant amount of non-significant expenses to supporting documentation. So we don't just test large transactions that happen in the year, we test the full population. So we test non-significant transactions as well to ensure your operating expenses are correct. Salaries, wages, and benefits, we want to make sure that that those are being recorded correctly, that individuals are getting paid approved rates, as well as that the salaries and wages are complete. So again, we perform work in that area. And then our last one, our main one, is management override of controls. So definitely management is in a significant position to potentially manipulate the financial statements through the use of journal entries. So we do use data analytic tools, which have identified journal entries that may exhibit characteristics of possible misstatement. So we do test those journal entries to ensure their accuracy and completeness. So we did not have any significant findings there. However, we have identified some other matters that we brought to management's attention within our management letter. When it comes to our significant findings, we did not reveal any significant deficiencies in internal controls, significant qualitative aspects of accounting practices. So we are of the opinion that significant accounting policies, estimates, and judgments and financial disclosures made by management do not materially misstate the financial statements taken as a whole. We do not encounter any significant difficulties that should be brought to the attention of council. Management representation, again, once we get a signed letter of that, we'll be able to issue signed financial statements. And then we do also submit a letter to management identifying non-significant items that we may have found during our audit that were brought to management's attention in order to proceed with that going forward. Unrecorded misstatements. So unrecorded misstatements is an area of the audit where we're performing our work, and sometimes we identify items that again we deem to be non-material or non-significant to the financial statement. So in this case here, we have a listing of 6 journal entries that we had proposed that would have resulted in a $52,000 overstatement of the municipality surplus. So when we talked about materiality earlier, being close to 400,000, we do not feel that these entries or these journal entries are materially misstating the financial statements. So we had some first one there, an overstatement of salaries related to 2019. So again, that's just a reflection of it being recorded in the wrong period. We reclassify credit balances between taxes receivable and into deferred revenue. So that's just amounts that are being prepaid just for presentation purposes. Under accrual of salaries and wages when we were doing work in that area of 34,000. MSI revenue 2019 that was recorded in 2020. So again, the costs were reflected in the prior year and the revenue in the current year of 43,000. Deferred revenue remaining Greater Yellowhead Public School Division funding of 15,579. And then overstatement of revenue related to federal gas tax of 30,000. So with that said, these amounts net to an overstatement of the municipality surplus of 52,000. So again, after considering these, we do not feel that these transactions are material in nature and would change any of the opinions of the users of the financial statements on the results of the municipality at year end. Other matters. So we do have one comment here. During the course of our audit, we had noted that cost recoveries related to operator fees of the wastewater treatment plant were not invoiced until subsequent to year end. So this was due to significant delays in receiving actual cost allocations from the operator and due to the transition of key administrative positions in 2020. So decision for how to account for the cost increases was not addressed until 2021. So due to the delayed invoice, the municipality has only been able to recover a larger portion of the allocated costs in relation to this. So again, we do recommend that in the future that any significant cost recoveries be invoiced in a timely manner. So this is something that we had again noted or was brought to our attention during the audit that we had performed a work over. So again, just other matter to add to our report. Appendix 1, talk about our auditor independence. So we are independent of the municipality. We do not hold a financial interest, a position, have a personal or business relationship or economic dependence with the municipality. Appendix 2 is our management representation letter. So in here, we just talk about management being forthcoming with information and that we received requested items from management to be truthful in performing our audit, as well as subsequent event procedures that were identified and noted by management to us. So again, that's our management letter to be a representation letter to be signed. And then on Appendix 3, we talk about new and revised accounting standards. So there are new accounting framework or new standards coming down the pipeline to be reflected on your municipality's financial statements. So there are 5 new sections beginning April 1st, 2022, which will have an effect on your December 31st, 2023 financial statements. The main one being Public Sector 3280 or asset retirement obligations, which I do have 4 pages on. And then for April 31st, 2024, revenue section will be involving additional disclosure requirements for the municipality's financial statements. So with that said, I'll dive right into asset retirement obligations. So So in August of 2018, the Public Sector Accounting Board did adopt PS 3280 asset retirement obligations. This has been around for a lot of years. International financial reporting standards follows this, accounting standards for private enterprises, as well as accounting standards for not-for-profit. So it's time for the public sector to adopt this section and bring in its version of asset retirement obligation to local government. So what is an asset retirement obligation? Well, an asset retirement obligation is defined as a legal obligation associated with the retirement of a tangible capital asset. So costs that are associated with asset retirement activities may include decommissioning a tangible capital asset, remediation of a contamination, post-retirement activities such as monitoring, or constructing additional assets to perform post-retirement activities. So these are areas or examples of what an asset retirement obligation is. So how will this affect your local government? Well, definitely there will be an additional level of effort or work to be involved in this versus what we saw for liabilities for contaminated sites. This standard requires municipalities to assess for all legally enforceable liabilities. So this will require comprehensive valuation of all assets, whether active or inactive. So really a lot of the work is going to become to gathering the data, looking at the assets that are within the municipality and identifying those that potentially could meet the definition of an asset retirement obligation. This section does include asbestos removal as an in-scope asset retirement obligation. So if that does exist in any of your infrastructure items or buildings, then you'd want to make sure that that those costs are being accounted for on your statement of financial position for December 31st, 2023. Also, another area, definitely the availability information will present a considerable challenge as this information is not normally readily available. So you do have your tangible capital asset listing, but with that said, there are a lot of there could potentially be items or definitions there that wouldn't trigger necessarily maybe finance department to identify that as having an asset retirement obligation. It would definitely be a more of a collaborative effort amongst the municipality to identify whether asset retirement obligations exist. One area you don't have to worry about, solid waste landfill closure, so that will change for those municipalities that have that section. So we do have a three-phase approach here, so definitely we're looking to get started on this as 3 years will come up quick. Implementation phase, we want to identify those potential assets that could meet the definition of asset retirement obligation, recognizing those assets that do meet the definition, and then measuring those assets before December 31st, 2023. So in phase one, we talked briefly about identifying those assets. So definitely, finance does know a lot about what's going on in the municipality, but there are other departments that have a lot of information, public works, engineering, asset management, legal counsel, that could potentially or be involved in assessing whether an asset retirement obligation exists. Costs that are in scope of this area, remediation of buildings with asbestos, wastewater, sewage treatment plants or linear assets, closure, post-closure of landfill, removal of a fuel storage tank, a septic bed or firewater holding tanks, removal of radiological medical equipment, as well as end-of-lease restoration. So again, for us, we just want to bring this to the attention sooner than later, work with the municipality or have the municipality potentially compile a complete inventory listing, and then work with them to identify assets that meet that definition and identify it in the recognition stage. So when it comes to recognizing asset retirement obligations, so definitely there identify the definition of what that means. So once we're able to get a listing of assets that potentially meet that, we want to work to identify which ones potentially do or don't before we move into phase three, which would be to have these assets measured. And when it comes to measuring on phase three, we're looking at the costs associated with the decommissioning or treatment or remediation of the asset retirement obligation, and what's the best approach to determine the cost of this. The benefit of the asset retirement obligation adoption is that there are potentially assets within the municipality that do have costs associated with them that are not being currently reflected on your statement of financial position. So this handbook section is changing the treatment of that to get these costs reflected in your tangible capital assets, in your liabilities, so that these costs do show up in your operations annually, and that you can identify or save or budget in order to remediate these things in the future, as opposed to having brought to your attention at some point in the future and there is no additional funds put aside for these costs. So with that said, every municipality is different. Could you have no asset retirement obligations? Could you have a handful? Only time will tell as we go through the process of identifying potential assets that meet the definition. And then on the last page, on page 4 of the asset retirement obligation, or appendix 4, starting PS 3280. So we just have identified initial questions to get the ball rolling and to begin planning for this section going forward. So again, it is 3 years away, but what we're looking for is to again identify a listing, discuss with management as to which ones meet the definition before any costs or additional costs are incurred in order to have work done to determine what the liability or cleanup of these asset retirement obligations could be. So with that said, that's the end of my audit findings report, and I can definitely take any questions in relation to this or my other presentation at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alliston, for both presentations. Further questions from council? Councillor Journeau.
Thank you very much. We didn't have the last part of your presentation in our agenda package for your information there, Mr. Allison. So I'm going to go back to my questions that I had for the previous portion of it. As councillors, in your second part of your presentation, you mentioned something about the water billing at the wastewater treatment plant had been accumulated all at the end of the year, and somehow, I don't have the documents in front of me exactly what you stated, but I'm going to take that and then throw it over to another aspect that's a concern of councillors, and that as councillors, we all sign checks. We spend 2 months as deputy mayor, and during that period, we'll sign checks, and there's always some questions that come up. And I wasn't a part of the last batch that's of concern, but it appears that the same thing applies to the purchases that are made on credit cards, that everything is accumulated right to the end of the year. And in the opinion of some councillors, and I sign in the middle of the year, so I don't see all those details. It appears that the month-to-month or regular accounting of this is not acceptable. Can you comment on that, please?
I guess when it comes to signing of checks, obviously you have dual signature on checks as controls to ensure that that they're that the proper approval is being made for payment. Assuming that the credit card approval as well is the same thing. You have a backup for what makes up a total purchase, and that the credit cards are being paid within a timely manner by management with approval from council, as well as EFT payments. Same sort of thing as well. When you're doing those, you want to make sure that there's again a dual signature or approval of those transfers as well. So when it comes to those controls being in place, those are the kind of things you're looking for to ensure that the transactions are accurate and that you are paying for, again, valid municipal expenses, and not something that isn't in relation to the municipality. So I don't know if I answered the question specifically. Those are my comments on controls in place when it comes to those areas, and I'll let Mr. Given here follow up. Thanks.
Go ahead, Mr. Given.
Yeah, thanks very much, Deputy Mayor McGrath. Just in addition to the comments provided by Mr. Allison, I would say that administration is currently following our approved financial controls procedures. Council's aware that you've requested a review of those financial controls and really all of our policies and procedures. Administration expects to prioritize some recommendations around our financial controls and that policy for your consideration. I will say, though, that all of the municipalities' bills are paid on time. I don't believe that there is and again, it might be, I could stand to be corrected, but I don't believe that there is a holding of information until the end of the year and asking councillors to sign off on all of that at once. But in any case, we will be reviewing in full detail our financial controls process with this council so that you have an opportunity to provide comment on what might be appropriate and so that we can ensure that we're streamlining the information that's going to council so that you're provided information at a level of detail that allows you to provide an informed opinion if we're asking you to sign something. It's my view, and we'll have this discussion, that there may be some information that's going to council where frankly you don't have the level of detail that's needed to be able to provide a useful check and balance. And so I think we can together provide a system that provides the disclosure that's needed for council, as well as the checks and balances that are needed for proper financial controls. And we expect to have that discussion with council as we review our financial controls policy as requested by council.
Thank you very much for your response, Mr. Given. Go ahead, Councillor Journeau.
This goes back to what I said earlier. I have some questions that have on the statement at a later opportunity. I'm going to go back to the financial statement, and it's page 23 of our documents, and it's on the accumulated surplus and unrestricted surplus of 6.3 last year, and it is 6.6 this year. So it compares favorably. However, when we compare to 2018, we had 2.4. And if I recall, the explanation last year from 2.4 to 6.3 was the fact that we had taken out the debenture and for the proposed renovations, but we drew it down, but we didn't make the expense. So hence the unrestricted surplus increased. So my question is, I guess comment is, it's the same this year. Now, accumulated surplus is a good thing. We need to have that money in the bank, but we as councillors control over the money representing the taxpayer, like to see them restricted. I believe, it's my thoughts, and I would like you to comment on that, that 6.6 million unrestricted is not, well, I won't say not acceptable. I mean, so I guess my question is two-part. Is that 6.6 million, is that still part of that debenture that was drawn down in December and not spent? Or do we really have that much money in the bank that is kind of just sitting there? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Journeau. Go ahead, Mr. Elliston.
Okay, I'll see if I can speak to some of this. So with the 6.6 million, definitely unrestricted, you know, in relation to it's obviously more than your restricted surplus. I would assume that during budgeting process, you'll be discussing transfers or payments or allocations of reserve amounts between unrestricted to restricted surplus. I think what you want to make sure of is that you do have an idea for where these funds are to be spent or earmarked or allocated for in the future. So definitely having an unrestricted portion, you know, based on, you know, I say when you do your budgeting process, just make sure that although it is an unrestricted category versus a restricted category, there's still a purpose for those funds being in there. So just make sure that that you do understand or aware of why that amount is that balance. When it comes to the cash component of reserves, I think when we look at accumulated surplus, we see unrestricted and restricted, and we think that we necessarily have 6.6 million or 4.4 million when it comes to capital, and that's not always the case. I think the big indication here of how much cash is there is when you look at your net financial asset position, which is the 5.2 million. If you were to take your cash, collect your receivables, pay off your liabilities, the 5.2 million is kind of what you would in essence be left with. This does include, when it comes to reserves, this does include whether long-term debt has been allocated to equity and tangible capital asset at your end or not. So that does have a factor in there. So those are other areas to look at when it comes to your accumulated surplus. So I can't really speak on you know, whether you have your numbers too high or too low, but definitely would just reiterate that when you're going through the budgeting process that you do again are comfortable with the amounts that you're working towards having in your unrestricted as well as restricted surplus. I don't know if CAO Given has anything to add or not.
Thank you, Ms.
And thank you very much, Deputy Mayor McGrath. Mr. Allison, maybe you can speak to what other types of instruments might be held in that 6.6 million. My understanding is that some of that may be grants that the municipality has received for specialized projects. So I think from Ms. Melichuk, an example of that might be the federal grants that were received towards the capital renovation at the activity center. So that is cash that's on hand. It does have a specified purpose, but it is not controlled by a restricted reserve that has a policy. So it is cash that the municipality has on hand. It is dedicated towards a purpose that council saw through budget, and it has not been segmented into a separate reserve by department area. So I hope that provides the additional clarity. Mr. Allison, is there anything that you would supplement my answer to you, given that you do this all day, every day?
No, that sounds good. That sounds good.
Go ahead, Councillor Journeau.
Thank you once again. To you, Mr. Allison, you just made a comment that you're not in a position to provide an opinion on whether the surplus is the position that it's in, but you do audits on the other municipalities. So you do have some knowledge of how other municipalities operate. And one of the reasons we selected you to renew the contract was that you are familiar with municipal audits. So I think that you can provide us with maybe not an opinion on a professional point of view, but you should have some point of view as to give us some comfort as councillors what our cash position is as opposed to the industry standards, let's say. Thank you.
So more in regards to what I would see from other I guess towns or within Alberta, is that, you know, yeah. I wouldn't say, I mean, when looking at your accumulated surplus, I think it's, I mean, your net financial asset position at 5 million, I think is good. I mean, it is obviously positive. You have been in a position before where you've had a net debt position where liabilities do exceed financial assets. So again, having sufficient cash to offset liabilities is very important. And then saving and building for future projects going forward is also important as well. Again, I wouldn't say that your, when I look at your net financial asset position, your accumulated surplus, I wouldn't say that this municipality is in a bad financial position. Definitely, with your, when we looked at that budget data slide, your net operation positive was 360,000 versus the net budget there of 0 on the financial statements. So that was good to see, as well as an increase in your financial asset position year over year. So definitely the trend in that case was good. When it comes to unrestricted and restricted reserves, again, I would recommend that you do have an idea of where those funds are to be spent. And we did speak to the additional grant funding or items that are collected in the unrestricted that have been budgeted for to be allocated. So just making sure that you are aware of that and that you do have an understanding of that is important. But again, I think that the financial position of the municipality of Jasper is fairly strong right now. So.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Elston. Any further questions from council? All right. Hearing none, it's my understanding, Mr. Gibbon, are we to make one motion to receive the audit findings for information in today's meeting?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor McGrath. Council received 2 presentations, although Mr. Allison did both of them consecutively. We did receive 2 presentations. There was the audit findings, which is the presentation that he ran through second. We'd ask that you receive that for information. I mean, the intent here and the governance practice is for the auditor to present, for council to have any questions about the audit findings. Essentially, is the auditor comfortable that the financial controls of the municipality are in place and appropriate, and if you have received that comfort from Mr. Allison today, then you could make a motion to receive that presentation for information. For council's additional information, next week we will bring the draft 2020 financial statements in their full detail to the council committee meeting so that you can review them, so that they hit a public agenda, and so that committee could make a recommendation that council approve the 2020 financial statements as presented. So for today, we're just receiving Mr. Allison's second presentation of the audit findings report for information.
Thank you for that clarity, Mr. Given. Is there a councillor prepared to make that motion? Councillor Demota, go ahead.
Yes, I move that council receive the 2020 audit presentation for information.
Thank you, Councillor Demota. Any debate on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? There are none opposed. Thank you very much, Councillor Demota. Thank you very much, Mr. Elliston, for your presentation and your thorough answers to all of our questions. And we will see you probably next year.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe in person, we'll see.
Yeah.
Be nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. You guys enjoy the rest of your meeting. Thank you.
Yes, you too.
Thank you.
Great. We do have a presentation from the library board. So my plan would be to hear the library board's presentation as agenda item number 4.2, then having a brief recess just for council's comfort and awareness. It's my pleasure to introduce our second presentation for today's meeting. It's the annual financial review of the Jasper Municipal Library. Here to present to us and to our community is our amazing library director, Mrs. Angie Tom, and our chairperson for the library board, Mrs. Joyce Melnick. Welcome to our meeting. Thank you for your patience as we went through the audit presentation first, and the floor is yours. Go ahead.
This is where I show off that I don't know how to share on Zoom.
There should be a green screen share button on your screen somewhere.
All right.
Maybe at the bottom.
And
Well, Mrs. Tom, if I could say anything, you sound like a radio host, a professional radio host. So that's
can anyone see my screen? Because suddenly you guys have all disappeared.
We see it, yes.
Excellent.
Okay, I will start. Good morning, Deputy Mayor, councillors, and everyone who's joining us today. I am Joyce Melnick, the Municipality of Jasper Library Board Chair, and with me is our Director of Library Services, Angie Tom. The Library Board was not able to do a spring presentation to Council in 2020, which made it important to do one this year. We will follow this presentation with a short talk on our annual financial review. 2020 and 2021 have seen so many challenges and changes. We've also seen the many ways our community supports each other. The Library Board would like to use this opportunity to recognize the many individuals and organizations who are helping the library through this long and challenging period.
And I don't have control of my screen.
Oops.
We'll do this old school. Did that change the slide?
Yes.
Excellent. As Joyce mentioned, this presentation is focused on saying thank you. The library has received so much support during this time, and we could not be more appreciative. I'm sure we'll miss someone. However, if we do, please know that you have our thanks for your support.
Sandy Cox accepted the library board chair position for the last year of her last term on the board in January 2020. She was able to lead a group of board members, many with only a year or two of experience, and not only complete some large planned projects, but keep the library functioning in an unprecedented situation. We can't thank Sandy enough for her hard work and dedication to the library.
Passionate and committed would be the words to describe the library board. In 2020, the library board already had a number of large projects to complete. The pandemic added more work, as well as a layer of complexity that had not been dealt with before. The creation of a new plan of service was already underway at the beginning of 2020. Library boards are legislated to have a current plan of service filed with the province as part of the provincial funding agreement. Thank you to the many people who answered surveys and spoke to board members in 2019 as we drafted the new plan of service. The plan was approved and submitted in May of 2020, then revised in November of 2020 to acknowledge the ongoing pandemic impacts on goals, their measures, and how we accomplish them. Having a pandemic plan was important in 2020. Having an adaptable and flexible plan was even more important. As with many organizations, the library's plan changed frequently to meet public health measures, AHS guidelines, provincial guidance documents, and municipal requirements. The board willingly reviewed and updated the plan, or its parts, multiple times as things changed and we gained practical experience. The other large project of 2020 was a complete review and update of the library's policy handbook. Emergency planning and respectful workplace policies were two areas that saw the most improvement, with broader understanding and better language. Library policies are now a better cohesive plan for how we do things. Free library memberships are an increasing trend across Canada. Membership fees are often barriers for those who would use the library most. The library board had envisioned offering free memberships starting in 2022 for our 80th anniversary. The board decided to offer free memberships starting with March 15th, 2020 closure to help people access library e-resources such as ebooks, audiobooks, music, and movies when nothing else was available. It was originally intended as a short-term measure during our closed period. However, it became clear that free memberships were bringing in people who hadn't had memberships before. Having a membership not only gives people access to library resources, but also to staff support for setting up and using the various services. Offering free memberships is a small way to support our community.
What is a library director? Our director, Angie, is so many things. She plans and supervises the operation of the municipal library. She supervises and participates in maintaining our collections. She coordinates and evaluates our library services. She performs other duties that go beyond her job description. She is always available for the board's numerous questions and requests. She is our guide through the COVID-19 restrictions and health advisory recommendations. She is always empathetic and thankful for what the library can do for the community. As a problem solver, she is positive and always willing to change course when necessary. As a board, we are thankful to have her as our library director.
Library staff. On days where it felt like we were jumping into a murky pond, only to find out it was a raging river, the staff were fearless. In light of uncertainty, the need to master unknown skills, temporary and permanent layoffs, the staff were resilient and supportive. Quickly adapting to change is a requirement so we can continue to offer our core services. Learning to interact and solve problems for our members through phone, email, and social media took time and patience. Leveling up our online communications has been rewarding and received lots of interaction from the community. Shooting and editing video was never in the job description, but it has been added now. Trying new things is a common occurrence, including using our windows in new ways, especially when we can't have the public in. We are indebted to Yellowhead Regional Library. A fire hose of information is how I picture the early days of the pandemic. Yellowhead Regional Library, YRL as we call them, was instrumental in finding and filtering that information. They helped capture important news that was rapidly updating and changing, so we didn't miss it. When library staff was off-site during the facility deep clean, YRL took over updating our website and set up and handled online applications for memberships, not just for us, but for many other libraries as well. YRL staff quickly set up or found and shared training to help us navigate online services, working from home, and mental health. They also hosted coffee chats to help library staff connect and support each other. All of this while they were also navigating changes. Many of the supports YRL came up with during the early days are still around. They are more polished and organized now, and they are just as appreciated.
The Caring Jasper Friends of the Library Society supports the library with fundraising and advocacy work. We thank them for their hard work and support of the library over the years. Friends saw all of their annual and scheduled fundraising activities canceled for 2020. The invitation from the Jasper Museum inviting them to participate in the Arts and Culture fundraiser was greatly appreciated. In light of continuing concerns for 2021, Friends has decided to cancel their garden tour again and are reviewing each of the other events. They are in line for having casino. However, when that will happen is dependent on reduced restrictions. We are grateful to the municipality of Jasper for their ongoing support of the library. Thank you, Councillor McGrath, for your continued advocacy and backing of the library. And thank you, municipal staff, for the human resources advice, health and safety support, facility cleaning, day-to-day building operations, and so much more. We'd like to acknowledge the Government of Alberta. The province's decision to release half of the 2020 Provincial Library Operational Grant earlier than expected was much appreciated. Their inclusion of libraries as part of the Masks for Albertans project was extremely helpful for increasing use of masks in the community. Public Library Services Branch have been front and center in getting critical information out to libraries quickly, as well as advocating for library services at the different stages of recovery. They continue to support libraries as we carry on this path. Alberta Health Services have been instrumental in providing information in a timely fashion.
We are extremely thankful for the community's support. Sometimes simple things make a big difference. A quick call or chat in the street to see how we were doing had a way of turning a few very bleak days around. Offers of "what can I do?" are heard and appreciated. The biggest support was how quickly our library users adapted to changes. If the building is closed to the public, they call, email, or send Facebook messages to schedule no-contact pickups or request items from our shelves. If they need assistance with e-resources, they call so we can quickly resolve issues. And if the building is open to the public, they are comfortable with the restrictions in place and follow them. Regardless of whether the building is open or closed, they know that library staff are here to support them. Merci à CFA and their director Guillaume Roy for their ongoing assistance, sharing and translating information, as well as facilitating the translation and French voiceover for the how to use TrackPack video was extremely helpful. Offering ideas and working with library staff to provide alternate programming and activities for the community was appreciated.
Thank you to Deputy Mayor Jen McGrath and Council for allowing us to use this time to thank our community for their support of the Jasper Municipal Library. We look forward to the day when we can have you and the community back in the library. In the meantime, know that even when the library is closed, in the meantime, know that even when the building is closed, the library is open. Now I will turn it over to Andy to discuss the annual financial review.
Annual financial reviews are required by the Libraries Act, and once completed must go to Municipal Council for their information. This year's Municipality of Jasper Library Board's annual financial review has been included in your agenda package. The reviewer is required to create the report for council, as well as complete the annual cash flow report for the province. The Library Board has been careful financially, especially in light of the ongoing pandemic. I thought I'd just ask if you had any questions right off the bat.
Thank you very much, Angie. If you wouldn't mind, please moving away from this screen share so I can have a view of council. And it should just be a button that says stop screen sharing. Perfect. Thank you very much. And thank you for your presentation. Thank you for your gratitude and for fostering wellness in our community. Thank you to the board's ability to both survive and find ways to thrive during this challenging and certainly uncertain time. Thanks to all the board members who have dedicated countless hours, as the library board's presentation had mentioned, to the staff and to all of the volunteers for everything they and you have done. Are there questions from council or comments from council? All right. And we don't, Councillor Butler.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor McGrath. I really only want to echo your thanks. I don't have questions around the presentation. I appreciate it very much, but honestly, it would feel badly if the library board representatives left here today without some further words of thanks and encouragement on behalf of the municipality. I know, as we all do, that operating the library during these times has been exceptionally difficult, as has been the case for virtually all public facilities and public services. So I just want to echo your thanks for all the work that has been done. And I know that really big efforts have been made to navigate through these tough times with curbside pickup and all sorts of opportunities and programmings and online possibilities. The creativity shown is much appreciated by the community. So thank you very much, Ms. Melnick and Ms. Tom. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Given, should we have a motion to receive the annual financial review as presented today, or is that not needed?
Yes, I think it'd be appropriate. I believe the library's financial statements are integrated into ours as a related entity, and so it'd be appropriate for council to make that motion to receive for information.
Thank you. Do I have a councillor prepared to make that motion? Councillor Keller-Rampy?
I'm prepared to make that motion, Deputy Mayor McGrath.
Thank you very much, Councillor Keller-Rampy. Any questions or debate on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, Ms. Melnick, and thank you very much, Ms. Tom. I will call a recess until it's 11:03. Let's take recess until 11:08, giving us a brief 5-minute break, as we do have a meeting at 1:30, and I'd like to move swiftly through this agenda. Thank you. If you are in attendance, if you could please turn on your camera so I know I can call us back to order. All right, well, before I call us back to order, for council and administration and the public's information, Mr. Greathead is filling in for Mr. Given. Mr. Given has personal matters to attend to, and Mr. Greathead will be acting in his presence for the remainder of the meeting. So welcome, Mr. Greathead. Welcome back to our meeting, and we will move on to agenda item number 5, business arising from previous minutes. Are there any business items to revisit from the minutes of April 20th's regular council meeting? Councillor Demota.
Well, I noted that at our last regular meeting, we had a brief update on COVID cases in the community, and I'm happy to see the numbers come down. I believe when before the meeting today, I checked it was at 4, and although it's not ideal to have any cases whatsoever, what I am grateful for is the entire effort of the community collectively to work hard and sacrifice so that we are safe. And I congratulate everybody for that. I know it's trying for some, and you know, there's different opinions on the approaches taken and stuff, but I think collectively we've done a great job, and the effort is much appreciated. Congratulations, Jasper.
Thank you for that, Councillor Demota. Anything further for business arising from the previous minutes? Hearing nothing, I'll move on to agenda item number 6, department reports, in which we have none scheduled for today. Oh, sorry, Councillor Butler.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I was a little slow. I have a business arising.
Go ahead.
I have a concern, not in fact with the minutes of the last meeting, regular meeting, and the April 6th regular meeting are accurate. Where I have concerns, and I'm sorry that I have these concerns and I don't have another place to raise them. The concern I have is within the reporting on our website in council highlights. The wording in the council highlights for April 20th says that prior to final approval of the budget, council voted to decrease the operating funding for various departments in the amount of $249,000. That is not the case. And it's not the case on a couple of counts. One, the draft operating budget, which had that $249,000 in operating funding within it, was defeated at the April 6th regular council meeting. The council highlights for the April 6th council meeting don't even mention that that budget was defeated. But the budget draft with those larger amounts for various departments was never the budget. We did not remove funding from departments. All departments have more funding than they did in 2019. There may be some room for argument with respect to how some of that funding was allocated, but we did not reduce departmental funding. The current budget has a tax allocation of 11.4% over and above the 2019 tax allocation or tax requisition. It's 27% higher than the tax requisition for 2020. What council did is it did not agree with all of the increases in funding for various departments. But I am very concerned about a message that says that we decreased funding for departments. It is true, we did not accept all of administration's recommendations. So the increases to departmental fundings are less than they would have been if the budget had passed as presented on the 6th, but it didn't, it was defeated. So changes to the budget to come up with something that could achieve a majority vote from council and pass was a necessary process. And I'd like to point out that the budget that did pass, passed unanimously. So I am quite concerned with the wording in the council highlights. If we're going to have council highlights, I think we have to make sure that all aspects and a fair representation of what occurred at the meetings is transmitted. Otherwise, I think we're honestly better off just leaving the record of our meetings being the minutes for the meetings. So I didn't really know where else to bring this up except under new business, or sorry, under old business, because it relates to prior council meetings. But that is the concern that I have, and I would hope for accuracy in council highlights. I am concerned that there is a very confused messaging going out to the community right now. We have increased the tax requisition, and there are increases across the board in most, if not all, departments. Yet the messaging seems to be that I am hearing around the community that we cut departmental budgets, where in fact we didn't. We just didn't increase them as much as was requested. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Butler, for your observations and for your explanations. Is there any other business arising? Councillor Demota?
Well, I think that Councillor Butler made some very good points there. And, you know, considering those things being brought into light, I think that might provide us with a growing opportunity here in our communications. I know that we struggled a little bit last year, and we do have a change in administration. So, you know, I think that this is something that could be an area of focus. And, you know, with the information that's coming forward next week, maybe take some steps to provide more clarity to the community, and maybe if that's less information, like Councillor Butler suggested, maybe just having the minutes as the information going forward, or just maybe doing some work internally on how messages should be relayed to the public, and take some account into the community's receiving of that information. So I think there's some opportunities here to make things better. So I really appreciate what Councillor Butler brought forward, and I think that we need to do some work here still. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Demota. Anything further on agenda item number 5? Mr. Greathead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for this and for the comments of the councillors. We're going to take this back, review it, and discuss it with Mr. Given. And I'm sure we'll be in a position to deal with this at the next committee of the whole meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Greathead. Councillor Butler.
Through you to Mr. Greathead, thank you very much, Mr. Greathead. I just want to say that no particular action is being asked for. I am not asking for any particular action or response. I just wanted to make that comment for the record. Obviously, if administration wishes to come back with some response, it's welcome, but there's not necessarily any intent to task administration with doing some work relative to my comments. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification, Councillor Butler. Anything further for agenda item number 5, business arising from minutes? Moving on to agenda item number 6, department reports, in which we have none scheduled for today. And agenda item number 7, our bylaws are included in the agenda package. They're listed as they're currently in force at various stages of readings. And agenda item number 8 is our request for decisions. 8.1 being the Jasper Offsite Services. Mr. Greathead, will you be taking us through this?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, I will. Back on the March 2nd council meeting, council directed administration to take various steps towards ensuring that we've had services into the GC, GB, and GA lots, as well as directed us to borrow the money to make sure that we got this project going forward and aiming for completion before this fall. So we went through an RFP process looking for the detailed design and project management on this item. And we put it out for tender on ABC. We had 3 responsive bidders. And after evaluation and ranking, using a 2-envelope system, you know, where we went through the proposals, ranked proposals on their technical merits and project understanding. And then a second envelope revealed the price. And then the price did have an impact on the weighting of our final results. Unanimously, WSP was chosen by the evaluation committee when we did a compilation of all the scores. And we discussed this last week at the committee of the whole. At that time, council recommended referred this item for a decision today. So it's before you. When we have this decision made, we'll be able to engage everyone right away and get moving on this project.
Thank you very much, Mr. Greathead, for the background information. Council, is there any questions for administration before a motion is presented? Go ahead, Councillor Journeau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. this is not to do specifically with this request, but it's to do with what these people will be doing as a result of our approval of this request. And that's how to deal with the Jasper Discovery Trail. I just want to ensure that the integrity of the trail is not forgotten in the design. I realize we'll have to relocate it, so I'm not sure whether it's going to go in the front or the back. But I think the key components there is that once we built this trail years ago, it was to expand and ensure that it is wheelchair accessible as much as possible. And I know it's not the topic of discussion, so I hope you'll allow me to go on here, Madam Chair. So that I guess somewhere along the way is that we have widened the sidewalks on Connaught Drive for that purpose, to allow bicyclists and wheelchairs to meet. I would hope that that element is not forgotten when you do the design for this project. So I'm bringing it up now because you will be including in the design sidewalks, I suspect. I think there's already been some discussion. So I guess the only request would be that at present, from my point of view, would be to ensure that the sidewalk is wider in similar to what has been done at the rest of Connaught, to allow for traffic to be used for both the sidewalks, pedestrians, wheelchairs, and cyclists. It is a very popular trail, highly used. More and more people are becoming aware of it. And it's a great addition. And for those people who are walkers or even people who are cyclists. So I just want to ensure that the integrity of this trail continues within these three parcels. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Journeau. Is there any further questions for administration? Councillor Butler and then Councillor Demota.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Greathead, thank you very much. Again, I'm happy that it's actually you sitting here in front of us today with this RFD coming up for decision. I just wanted to recognize the work that has been done to date. I think it's, we get a little table with a few numbers and it doesn't necessarily reflect the long process that you have gone through along with Mr. Given and others to bring this up to this stage, because we really need this servicing done in order to afford ourselves the opportunity to build affordable housing in future along that site. So I appreciate it. I really only had one question though, and it relates to what Councillor Journeau was just asking about. I am curious whether at this point you know whether the scope of work would include any changes to sidewalks, or is this simply straight up the in-ground servicing? And I'm happy either way. I'm just wondering whether it is at this point determined or whether that would be part of what WSP would be looking at.
Go ahead, Mr. Greathead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. All these design elements, we're looking at adding infrastructure and not removing any. So we have had discussions about how our sidewalks are going to interconnect with our existing infrastructure, such as the pedestrian underpass and all that. And as well, we are really aiming for the proper feel and aesthetics through this design. You know, we've had some discussions on location of the hydrants, you know, the type of sidewalk that we're going to have, whether we're going to be a monolithic pour with curb and gutter and sidewalk, or whether there's going to be a boulevard. Those things are still going to be options to be determined as we go through this process, and they'll be all costed and scoped out so that the decisions can be made at that point as we're going further. So this is just to make sure that we do capture all the elements we need, and it isn't just necessarily the hard surfaces, or sorry, I guess the hard assets and infrastructure, pipes, valves, you know, catch basins and that we're talking about. It's the overall feel and restoration of our work area.
Thank you, Mr. Greathead. Councillor Butler.
Thank you very much. So just to clarify, our recommendation here relates to, I'm quoting here, the installation of water and sewer services. But what you're saying is that scope may, depending on what recommendations we get, that may include also assets like sidewalks.
Councillor Butler, it will include those elements. That's exactly what we're this portion of the project's for.
Terrific. Thanks very much for clarifying that.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Thank you, Mr. Greathead. Anything further? Councillor Demoda, I see you unmuted. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. I think along the same lines, I had questions about accessibility and connectivity. And, you know, I know that for a future capital project, we had the sidewalk connection between at the intersection where the underground railway pass is on Connaught, and between that and the Petro Canada there. There's always been a question on when that was going to get completed, and we've had some issues for people in the community making their way from that area, either across the street or from you know, the traffic lights there to the Petro Can on foot or by a wheelchair. So if that's being addressed in this, that would be a really good thing to have addressed sooner than later. So thank you for having that in consideration.
Mr. Greathead.
The feasibility study that we did and had conducted previously, Ms. Deputy Mayor, is that we were looking at tying in at several locations. One of them is going to be Connaught. Now we're going to be putting parallel services right along Connaught and Hazel and going up, and we're going to be connecting at Spruce, Pine, and Willow during this to make sure that we have adequate flow. All that stuff is going to be, all that in infrastructure, we're going to have to coordinate our traffic accommodation, because we're going to be removing at least one, or we will be removing one exit out of town. So we've got to make sure that we keep our traffic flow up. There's a lot of coordination steps that have already taken place, and Councillor Butler was alluding to it. You know, we've already engaged with our partners with ATCO Electric and ATCO Gas, talking about running the conduit while we're doing the pipe install, to make sure that we are, I hate the word, sounds too trite, but making sure that we're working for all the synergies that we can get and all the efficiencies. You know, we understand that this is an incredibly tight timeline for this project, and but I believe that the tight timeline doesn't take away from the fact that it's been a well-considered project and proposal going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Greathead, specifically for administration's attention to detail and foresight with this project. Is there anything further from council? Would there be a councillor prepared to present a motion? I have Councillor Wilson, then Councillor Journeau, followed by Councillor Butler. Is it the desire to present a motion or questions? Okay, great.
I was willing to make the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any debate on the motion? Great, I'll call the question. All in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. Thank you very much, Mr. Greathead. And moving on to agenda item number 8.2, appointments to the Culture and Recreation Board. Who might be presenting this agenda item? Mr. Greathead, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you again, Deputy Mayor. In April, there was a resignation on the Culture and Rec Board. Just too much, more of a scheduling issue and availability issue. So we did have a resignation, and that left a vacancy. Our policy allows us that memberships at large, we don't necessarily have to post, as long as we have suitable available candidates that are still willing to serve on these boards. Mr. Harvey is available and willing to serve on the board, and this recommendation went through the council's HR committee, and this is their recommendation to bring this forward and appoint Mr. Patrick Harvey to the Culture and Rec Board, and his term would be concluding on December 31st, 2023, when a new board would be chosen and elected at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Greathead. Is there any questions for administration on this item? Hearing no questions, there's a motion in our agenda that council appoint Patrick Harvey to the Culture and Recreation Board for a term commencing immediately and concluding on December 31st, 2023. Is there a councillor prepared to present that motion? Councillor Journeau?
I'd be prepared to make that motion. I'm delighted to make that motion. Mr. Harvey is an excellent candidate. He's a parent. He's a user. He's very active in the community, has a good pulse. So I think it'll be a great addition to the Culture and Rec Board, and I'm pleased to make the motion to recommend his acceptance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Journeau. With that motion on the table, is there any debate? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Councillor Journeau. Thank you, Mr. Greathead. Moving on to agenda item number 9, correspondence for information, consideration, or action. Sorry, Councillor Demota, I missed seeing you.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to make a further comment on that, on the pass item. Through the procedure bylaw, I just wanted to say that everybody that applied the last time around was contacted. And I just wanted to say that, you know, we didn't just draw one name out of the hat. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Demota. Is there any correspondence for information, consideration, or action? There's none on our agenda. Moving to new business. Is there any new business to be brought up today? Hearing no new business, we will move on to councillor reports. Do any councillors have reports on their committees and boards? Councillor Keller MP.
I attended the Community Futures board meeting last Wednesday, and I just want to give a short update on the Regional Relief Rural Fund. Community Futures received $3.5 million, and we have just given out over $3.25 million out in loans. They started out with a $40,000 loan, and then the top-ups of $20,000. I just want to say that 42 loans were given out within the region, and 16 of them were given out to businesses within the Jasper community. There is still some funding a little bit left, so that if any business has not received some of this funding or need to apply, they should apply to the portal.
Thank you very much, Councillor Keller MP. Are there any other councillor reports? Councillor Wilson.
Just that I'll be attending the West Yellowhead Regional Waste Management Authority meeting tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
Great, thank you for doing that on behalf of the municipality. I will report that I attended a Communities in Bloom Committee meeting yesterday morning with the Communities in Bloom Committee and some operational staff. We have decided for the 2021 year that we will not participate in the virtual Communities in Bloom competition. We are sending our deposit forward to the competition year for 2022. However, there's still some initiatives that the Communities in Bloom Committee is excited to hopefully work on this coming season. Tomorrow, I will be attending a Yellowhead Regional Library meeting, as well as a community conversation. If there's nothing else to report in councillor reports, Councillor Demota.
Yeah, actually, thank you very much, Mrs. Deputy Mayor. This question is for you. It's not much of a report, but I was just inquiring on the initiative that the Communities in Bloom helped bring forward in the Tidy Up Tuesdays. Is that something that's still being considered going forward? I think that was an excellent initiative for the community, having a lot of participation.
Yeah, last summer was an excellent summer for Tidy Up Tuesdays. We had lots of involvement. We're currently in the process of discussing what day will work best for the committee. I think we're a very small committee now. We've lost some committee members, so there's only 3 of us, including myself, plus 1 administrative assistant from the operations department. So we're a little lean in our committee. So we're putting some energy towards reinventing some initiatives and redeciding where that effort, it might not be Tuesdays. So we might have to find a new slogan for the initiative, but certainly Communities in Bloom is focused on Tidy Town initiatives, and we'll continue that with momentum moving forward, and hopefully also draw some new community members into the committee.
Okay, that's good. And having said that, is there a process in place right now with the procedure bylaw, or is that being reviewed to get participation on that? Because I'll support that. I've sat on that committee, and I think it's an excellent committee to have as part of council appointments, but also from community involvement.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's a question I've been asking since I was placed on the Communities in Bloom committee. It is the one committee that's kind of more of a one-off, than it's not as procedurally founded as the rest of the committees and boards that council appoints. So it is a less distinct process than the rest of the committees and boards. So it will require some conversation with probably the HR committee and council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further on councillor reports? We'll move to upcoming events. During our break, I noticed an email. So upcoming events this afternoon at 1:30, we have an intergovernmental meeting that is virtually held with Parks Canada Agency, as well as the Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce general meeting has been changed to June 3rd. So our agenda says May 6th, but there has been a date change on that. And does any councillor or is the administration aware of any other upcoming events that we should be aware of? Hearing nothing, we can move to agenda item number 13. It is 11:36 a.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Keller-Empey, all in favor? Well, thank you very much. And thank you to administration and to council and to the Zoom listeners for attending our regular meeting today. And we will see you next week at our Committee of the Whole meeting at 9:30 a.m. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
sir.
Deb.
Thank you.